I've got Rachel, and she's chosen this classic song. Got to remember how it goes. Oh, D minor, that's a difficult one. You say and you wander your own life, but everybody's changing and I don't know who I am. So little time, try to understand that I try to understand just to stay in the game and try to awake and remember my name. And everybody's changing and I don't feel the same. That's all you're getting because it's about you, not about the song. Hello, Rachel. How are you?
Hi, Ashley. I'm really pleased to be here. Thank
Fantastic.
you. Thanks for playing that song.
So my first question, as always, is why did you choose that song?
Well, I felt the title and the lyrics were resonant with one of the things I'm passionate about, which is thinking about preparing for aging or prep aging. And it's talking about everybody changing, the world changing. I don't know who I am. So, coming up to, I just hit 60 last year.
No.
That was the right response. And it's a time of life where I think you do need to recalibrate, reset, think about who you are, take stock of who you are, and think about those years ahead. What may come along, what curveballs may hit you. We know the kind of things that we can expect in old age, and we associate, I think, some negativity with those, understandably. It could be loneliness, loss, bereavement, status changing, as it says in the song, the world around us changing, cultural changes, things where we don't really feel like we fit in the same way as before. So thinking about those things can be quite negative, but there are some positive things we can do to prepare.
You're going to put a spin on that today, which is absolutely superb. I was listening to a podcast this morning, actually, and the lady who was being interviewed was saying about how she's a corporate and now she's a coach, and she went into that because she just hit 40, and okay. I'm thinking, oh, how sweet to be so young, and yeah. And she was saying that her in-laws, the father-in-law had been diagnosed with onset early dementia or Alzheimer's or something at 63, and he died within a couple of years, and then mother-in-law died pretty soon after that from cancer, and it just, that's young, isn't it? And so her whole being now is because of the fragility of life, and so she totally changed everything that she did. But yeah, and I think one minute we're young and enjoying youth and stuff and thinking that 30-year-olds are old. Yes, and then you turn around and you think, oh my goodness, 30 was such a long time ago. And so, interesting subject. Just to say hello to Lucy. Hi, Lucy. Thanks for popping in. So tell us a little bit about yourself then, Rachel. And then we'll dig deeper into this aging thing, because the only thing that is sure as eggs is we are all getting older.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my background is actually in international education. I've been doing that for a very long time, and it's a great sector to work in. Being around students, international students in my case, certainly helps to connect you to the younger generation, and they're such a creative, amazing bunch. So yeah, I've been doing that. Fortunate enough to have lived in a few far-flung places, which were all fascinating in different ways, and now based back in the UK in Bournemouth. And as I mentioned, it was coming up to my 60th birthday that it seemed there were a few other things going on in my home life, and it just seemed a perfect time to reflect and start, I suppose, finding out more about what growing older could mean for me. and whether there were things I could start doing, small things that might make a bit of a difference to the older person that I'm going to become. So what can I do to shape that older person, the older me?
And I hope you're going to tell us what we can do as well, because it's not long until I'm 60, and that's the scary thing, isn't it? It used to seem that grandparents were 60, and
Yes.
it all catches up. I've got a few questions to ask you about LinkedIn, because obviously I help people with LinkedIn, and that's how I know you, because you came on to one of my workshops. So what is it you like about LinkedIn?
I think, and I'm only just starting on my LinkedIn experience. I think what really struck me when I was in one of your sessions was you said how only 1% of the content on LinkedIn is self-created. And that to me represented a massive opportunity, because people are obviously really keen to get hold of that content and respond to it. And that tends to be what I do. But not many of us are actually taking the time to create something. And that's really the direction I'm very keen to go in, because what I've discovered about aging, I'd like to share with others. I've written a book, which I'll probably mention again in a minute.
You can show it. Let's see your book. Let's see your book. No, and that's the thing, right? Because you've written a book, you could actually. How many pages in your book, Rachel?
It's about 250.
Wow. So that's 250 blog posts you could do, isn't there?
I suppose, yes. Yeah, that should set me up for a little while.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, isn't it? And you start sharing these little things that you can do. Do you use any other social media?
Yeah, I started when I started thinking about happy silver people as the idea, the way of the kind of brand for sharing the ideas. It wasn't with the idea of doing a book to start with. It was actually YouTube. So I started with YouTube, which again was something I was totally unfamiliar with, but I felt I needed to learn some new skills, and that's how I went into it. And then I've dabbled a bit with Instagram. That's another area I need to do more with. But Facebook has been is still, I suppose, the main way in which I share things. The main social media platform.
Is that where we're going to find more silver people then? Is it, Rachel?
Yes, I've got my own little Happy Silver People group who are fabulous. There's 300 plus people in there. And I post stuff. I do a live every week, but it's fabulous when they post ideas and things that they're doing and questions. And so I like to try and keep that as vibrant as possible.
Brilliant. Kevin's saying your book's highly recommended, so that's cool.
Hello, Kevin.
Pavel is also saying hi. And Emily, here's a question for you. What are your thoughts on Twitter?
Oh, good question, Emily. Many years ago, I did used to use Twitter, but not terribly much. And it seems to have really fallen out of favor. I haven't got very involved with it since. I mean, interestingly, my demographic probably do use Twitter quite a bit. But from what I gather, it tends to be used in a not terribly positive way, or it can be. So I've kept away from it. However, if you think Twitter would be a good direction for me to go down, I'd be very interested in hearing more. Emily, I don't think you're quite my demographic yet. You're a wee bit young, I think, but of course, never too young to start preparing.
Absolutely, and with all due respect, Emily, you've literally just got a minute older. So, that's and that's the thing. We all need to read your book, don't we? Because there's things that we should be doing. So, how often do you create your own content on LinkedIn, then, Rachel?
Well, my intention, and I've started doing it, was to do at least once a week a say something nice post. And I think Ashley,
I was the beneficiary of one of those.
One. Yeah, and there are so many. I mean, the scope for that's just massive, because there are so many people, organizations, businesses that you could focus on. So I'm quite happy doing that. That's wonderful. And then the other thing I want to do is once a week, some kind of tip related to growing older, maybe something you could work on over the weekend, or so that's coming next.
Fantastic. You've heard it here, folks. And now you've told us you have to do it. So not only have you been an awesome guest today, you've also got some accountability.
Yeah.
come on then, tell us about this book. What started it all? Why, why and where and how? Come on.
Yeah, so beginning of, I've lost track, 2021, I think. I could see the following year I was going to be 60. So that was a big milestone coming up. And later on in that year, my daughter got very severe learning difficulties. So it was great. She was at home for many, many years. And but that summer she moved into supported living. And that then freed up a little time for me to focus a bit more on my search for what I could do to prepare to grow older, and then ultimately get the book started and eventually written. So it came out in autumn last year. And so it's wonderful still being able to see my daughter. She's very close by, and do miss her at home. But it did just give me a little bit. Life was quite restricted, so it gave me a little bit of opportunity to try out some other things.
I think that's the thing. Someone's had the electric. That's interesting.
Yes, I'm afraid.
So what happens is, right, we generally we get married or have a life partner, and then we have some kiddies, and then your life's focused around them, and then they leave. My youngest is getting married in 3 weeks' time, and you're sort of like, what now? And it's sort of like, I must be old. So I guess that's the catalyst for many people to start thinking of their old age. So what sort of things do we need to think about when we're preparing?
Well, there's a range of things. There's 60 different sections in my book, and there are a lot of questions in there that we can ask ourselves. And this is by no means exhaustive. I mean, there's plenty of things I didn't cover in here, but I focused on what I felt was generally probably the areas that would be most applicable to the majority of people. So some of them are around the physical aspects. So it's things like brain cells, obviously keeping those very active and engaged, around our backbones and spinal support, making sure it's straight, supple. Yes, for straightening up. Straight, supple, and strong. Gut, digestion, hydration, all of those areas also incredibly important for us to think about as we grow older. Our nutritional needs will change. So we need to think about how we're getting, I was surprised, for example, how much protein we need to eat, even as we're growing older, and we might actually be less active. And it's also important as we grow older to spread that protein throughout the day. So it's not just in one meal, because we can't absorb as much goodness from it in one go. So things like maybe eating a little differently, thinking about what we're eating, making sure we're drinking enough water, although we'll probably want to pee more. So you've got that. There are quite a few tensions here. Our bladders become weaker and less able to contain as much liquid as before, but we need to still keep drinking. So how do we manage that tension? What else? Feet. How to keep your feet. Again, they need extra care as we grow older. So how can we keep them functioning well and keeping them happy? There's also teeth, really, really important. Mouth hygiene. Think about the way in which we're cleaning our teeth, because it sounds really, really basic. But as we grow older, our gums will tend to recede. So we need to make sure that we're really, really getting into those little areas at the base of our teeth where decay can be exacerbated. And making sure our mouths are healthy and refreshed on a regular basis. And then there's all the sensory side of things. Our senses, we can do things to help them deteriorate less slowly, or to actually improve them a little bit, even though we're growing older. And obviously our senses are the way in which we interact with the world. We get enjoyment from the world. We respond to what the world is telling us, but they're very, very linked to memory too. So it's very important that we create those links back to our memories, try, keep those neurons working. And as we have more experiences and we're growing older, making sure that they are full of sensory input, because that will help us access those more recent memories more easily. That's just the physical side of things. And then there's all the kind of emotional, mental side of things, positive attitude, trying things that are new, making sure we don't go stale. Even if we are less able to move around or things become more difficult for us to access, there's a lot we can do from home. And I deliberately in the book tried to choose activities and put suggestions in there for people who maybe can't move very far, who can't go off traveling around the world. There's plenty you can do from wherever you may be as an armchair traveler. And how to keep engaging with the world. As we grow older, the world can feel sometimes a bit of a frightening place, and it's easier to stay in your comfort zone and keep doing things you're familiar with, which is fine as long as you're still mixing it with a few things that are new and different, and keeping all your brain, your senses and everything else active and engaged. Sorry, that was a rather long answer to your question, Ashley, but there's an awful lot to talk about.
I'm thinking, oh my goodness, we've only got 15 minutes, which we've used up already. We'll go to one, because I've never done that before. And this is the thing, right? I'm thinking, right, I need this book, because I thought it was a little bit of exercise and stuff like that. Lucy said here that she never thought about feet. Absolutely great tip. You've also asked a LinkedIn question. I'll do that at the end, Lucy. Fiona loves this, and Heather says, lovely to see you both, and she loves to say something nice out there, which is glorious. Now, one of the things that people notice about me is I'm always positive, happy, full of energy and stuff like that, and that does help reduce the aging process. Is that correct?
Yes.
Or am I just kidding myself?
No, you're wasting your time, actually. No, there has been some research that suggests that, a positive mindset will help. And I think my conclusion was that really the positive outlook does underlie a lot of these areas. So, yes, you may have illness, you may have things that happen to you that you'd never expected. You may experience change that's not particularly positive or welcome. So the way in which you respond to that will be important. I think realistically, as we go into older age, there will be some negative aspects to it, and you'll probably be more vulnerable at that point. So the resilience side of it, and trying to recognize that things are difficult, of course, not saying you sort of minimize that, but being able to pick yourself up again and see some positive aspects in what's going on around you, I think it's really, really important.
No, I don't know what you're thinking now, but in my mind, I can see Victor Meldrew.
Yes.
Those of you that don't know who Victor Meldrew is, he was a situation comedy about 20 years ago, wasn't it, Rachel? Probably longer than that.
Probably longer, yes.
He was made redundant at age 60, I think it was.
And that seems terribly old.
Or maybe it was 50 then. Maybe he was made redundant at 50. Yeah, you're right. It did seem old. And he seemed an old guy, didn't he?
Yes.
And everything he did was just a right curmudgeon, wasn't he? Yeah. And I think that's a typical way of thinking of elderly people. But I think that's all changed now, don't you? Do you think that you're seeing more active elderly people?
Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely. 60 today is nothing like 60 was when I was.
It's young, isn't it, Rachel? It's so young.
It's very, very young. It's a world apart. Absolutely. But I think even now there's I sort of find myself, and I hear some of my contemporaries saying, well, why do young people do that? And why is everyone such a terrible driver? And they weren't like that, 20 years ago. And this kind of thing, which is not really the case, is it?
No. So the thing for me is, I think I like calling us old. Kevin's got a great point. The Glastonbury headliners.
Yeah, good point, Kevin.
Oh, I'm just trying to think of Cat Stevens. Cat Stevens was on
Yes,
Sunday
yes.
afternoon, and I asked Alexa how old Cat Stevens was, and I was thinking, well, Elton John's on later. I'm sure he's older, and you know, so I think Cat Stevens is 74 and Elton John's 76. So yeah, I've got plenty more guitar playing games, you know, ahead of me, and that's the thing. And I think it's a state of mind, and it's an attitude as well. I was looking at some old wedding photographs of my parents. Now, my parents married very young, but you know, back in the day, they were getting married, you know, at 20, and therefore, my parent or my grandparents, so they're both sets of parents were at the wedding, and they looked like old people.
Yes,
and they would have been between 40 and 50. Now, I still wear Converse. I wear T-shirts. I went to a book launch last night to support a friend, and I wore shorts. But in my grandparents' day, they'd have put a suit and tie on, and you know, and a headscarf and all that sort of malarkey. And they just dress old. But you don't see that so much nowadays. I think people are fighting against it. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, massive shift, definitely. But probably 60s onwards, maybe that's when it starts to creep in a little bit.
Well, have you stopped shopping at Topshop then, Rachel? and what things then? Quick tips. What if you know if there was one thing that I should take from this today, what should it be?
Buy my book, I think, would be the
I've got that.
It's all in there. I think possibly just start by going away and reflecting on those big questions. You know, how do you feel about growing older? Be realistic. Thinking about your own family and how other people in your family have grown older, maybe your contemporaries as well. What do you think is likely to be a scenario for you as you grow older, or possible scenarios, and then think about how you could prepare for those. What interventions could you put in place now? So for me, for example, because I've got one daughter and she's got severe learning difficulties, I know there won't be anyone to sort out my stuff. That's assuming I live longer than my husband. Statistically, that's likely to be the case. So I need to start doing things now to deal with all that. You know, I tend to be not exactly a hoarder, but I like to keep mementos of the past around me. That's going to be of no interest or relevance to anyone else in the future. So what can I do now to keep with me enough so that I get what I want from it, but without it being excessive and create a problem for someone else another day, or a burden? So I think start by taking a good, long, honest look at yourself. Your preferences, the way you like to live, the things that interest you, don't interest you, and try and visualize how you might be in the future and what kind of old person do you want to be, and then what plan can you start putting in place now to get to where you would like to be when you're perhaps 70, 80 or older.
And beyond.
Yeah, my grandmother was 103 when she died, for example. So there's been quite a few women who've lived to late 90s, 100 plus in my family. So that might be something for me. I don't know.
Yeah, so plenty of life in Rachel yet. Absolutely. We're quickly running out of time. I just wanted to highlight the charity, which is how we know each other. So give a little shout out and why you know a little bit about this amazing charity, which is Young Lives versus Cancer.
Yeah, so we do have a link through Young Lives versus Cancer. Ashley's done some fabulous fundraising for it. And my connection is that it was started by my father when my brother, or not long after my brother was diagnosed with cancer. And that will be 50 years ago in February that's coming.
Wow.
Yeah, so my brother unfortunately didn't make it through, and he died when he was nearly 12 of a neuroblastoma. But back in those days, only 30% of children with cancer survived. and nowadays it's 70%.
Wow, that's incredible.
Increasing all the time. It's a very, very different scenario. And back then, actually, I was talking recently about this. People used to come up and say, I didn't know children could get cancer. It really wasn't something that was seen or talked about or perhaps even diagnosed in the way that it is today. My parents, we were fortunate enough to live on the outskirts of Bristol, and Bristol was the main hub for cancer care in the southwest. So there were parents travelling from all over the southwest, the Channel Islands as well, south of Cornwall, and they'd have to split the family, and one of the parents would be up staying with the child and sleeping on the floor in the hospital, etc. So my parents set up the first home from home in the UK for any charity, knew where we live, and that was a place that families could come together and stay for free while their child was having treatment. Obviously the child, if able, could come out and visit and have a bit of fresh air and green space, etc., away from the hospital. So that's how it all began many, many years ago now, and amazing differences that have been made since, but still hearing even now places like Cambridge, for example, parents still sleeping in their cars while their children are undergoing treatment. So still a need for masses of support.
Well, we're still supporters. So my friend Will Vine and we are playing at the there's a fun run that they're doing locally in a few weeks' time, and we'll be playing there, for to give in our services, so to make it entertaining for everybody that's there. So it's a great charity. And it's just lovely to know you, Rachel. Lovely to know you. I've got one more question for you. You've been a lovely guest today, but I just want to go into my guest next week, and I also want to answer that big question that Lucy's got as well. So let's go over to our show next week. Now, next week it's all about using video. So I've pulled in a few favors, twisted a few arms, and so Amanda is a marketer, but she encourages people to use video. She talks about she's an introvert, and she talks about introverts and helping them. So she's absolutely brilliant. Lee is a video expert, and Francesca Trecarico does like 1 million videos, but she started one day. And so what I'm trying to do is get more people creating video. And so it's a special show dedicated to video. So that's next week. So that's going to be fun. Let's answer this question. So Lucy is wondering what you do about connection requests on LinkedIn. Do you accept them all? And she's got 50 connection, but not all in the UK, and has several private messages selling. Okay, great question, Lucy. So here's the answer. If they're going to add value to you and your network, then accept the connection request. If they're not, then click the ignore button, but don't leave them hanging. If you have intentions to spread your business and work around the world, then it doesn't matter if they're not in the UK. But if you want to be specific UK, then again, you don't need to accept those that are abroad. Now, some people only connect with people that are in their local area or people that they know. It's up to you. It's more about quality than quantity. So, for example, I work with people that work with small businesses. So you might get a recruiter contact you. Well, they're a perfect person to connect with because they're talking to lots of other small businesses. So it's thinking about who they are and what they are. If they're sending messages already selling, do you really want to connect with them? I send people a little message going back to them saying, why don't you come on my course and I'll teach you how to do social media so you don't have to send spammy selling less messages. So I hope that helps, Lucy. But that's my answer for whether or not you can connect with people. Okay, then, Rachel, my last question to you. What advice would you give your 16-year-old self?
I would say be much, much more confident. I was very shy and quiet when I was 16, and I started wearing extraordinary clothes because I thought I'd prefer that to be the focus of people's attention rather than me. So I loved wearing the clothes and came up with some amazing outfits, but yeah, I would say be much more confident in yourself and go for it. Yes.
So wearing all these flamboyant clothes, you would have come across as being confident. Isn't that
Yes.
weird?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good for you. That's a great answer. Rachel, you've been absolutely delightful. How do we get hold of this book? And if you could put a link in
Yes.
the comments after this, then people can go and get that. But that's also going to be in the podcast, so in the show notes we'll be able to get hold of that. Or where else?
Yes, so through Amazon basically is the way to get it now. I did have some hard copies, but they've all gone.
Oh, well done. Well done. Rachel, thank you so much for being a lovely guest. Thank you to everybody for all your wonderful questions. And I will be back next week, like I say, with my video friends. Thanks ever so much indeed. And we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
You get out what you put in. Never gonna lose.